to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, January the 7th. I'm your host, Michael Leva, joined by Josh Moser of WSVN 7, South Florida's #1 news channel, reporting live from Miami Gardens, Florida. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm actually sitting in the chairs where Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel gave their season-ending press conference from right now. We've been out here all day, and watching the playoffs from the couch this year, Mike. And
no one thought
that, the team would be in this position, but here we are.
Yeah, and I think, nobody expected the Chiefs to probably win. So that, and that game got so out of hand last week that it didn't matter what happened with the Jets-Miami game. But we got a lot to talk about what was said today at this press conference, the future of the Dolphins. We're not looking back. We're not talking about the Jets game. We're looking forward. But before we do that, a quick word from our sponsor.
The DolphinsTalk.com podcast network is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive, Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship it to you. International fans, too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com.
All right, so the Dolphins now begin their off season, and there was a lot said today at the press conference. There's a lot that's happened since that game ended. I guess we got to start with the elephant in the room, which is Tyreek Hill. Everything that happened after the game, he gave his little media session, spoke about, he might want out of Miami, and, he seemed frustrated. He seemed really upset that they didn't make the playoffs and everything that happened this year. I guess, what are your thoughts on this? I got some questions, but let's see where you go with this. What are your thoughts on what he said after the game, where we are now? Because they said today at the media session they met with him Monday, he didn't ask for a trade, and Mike McDaniel said he thinks this is fixable. What are your thoughts on that whole situation with Tyreek Hill?
So we'll start with the post-game comments. Well, let me backtrack. Today we officially learned that Tyreek took himself out of the game in the fourth quarter. So
that's official.
That is official. So we'll start there. And post-game, the comments, obviously knee-jerk reaction, you're emotional. If you're pulling yourself out of the game, you're obviously very frustrated. In talking to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, he could have had season-ending wrist surgery, went to multiple specialists, but he decided to play through that. So in Tyreek's eyes, he gave everything to this team. And obviously it didn't end the way that anybody expected it to end, or certainly Tyreek wanted it to end. He missed the playoffs for the first time in his career. He is under 1,000 yards for the first time since his rookie season, and he's missing his first Pro Bowl since he came into the league. So you can understand that he's upset and he's emotional. Now, the comments that were made, in my opinion, as a captain of this football team and someone that is paid the amount of money that he is, you just can't do that. You're a professional. There's nothing to gain by saying what he said. Maybe he, saw Jimmy Butler in the media try to do something similar. However, there's nothing positive that can come from that, especially when you have all of the other teammates in the locker room and they reacted to it. I remember Alec Ingold came out and said, he was upset that Tyreek said that he wants out. And here you have your best player, the #1 player in the NFL preseason, voted on by the players, voted on by the NFL Network, And he's just like, you know what? If we're not going to win, I want out. And, so from there, I think he was completely emotional and he was in the wrong. And I think he realizes that now. Then you're going to go a step farther and you're going to see him on social media with the Antonio Brown meme. And, he could say that he's trolling or, he's trying to make light of the situation because that's who he is. Again, if you're a captain on this team and the leadership on this team and you just missed the playoffs for the first time, I think the sentiment around the building is that you need to have a more serious attitude when it comes to that. So those are my thoughts on the comments. And as far as today, we learned that Mike McDaniel spoke to him for roughly an hour and they were able to hash it out. We also learned that officially he did not ask general manager Chris Grier for a trade. And it seems like they can move forward in a positive direction. Obviously, he's your number one option on offense. You're going to have to keep him happy. You can say player-led team, whatever have you. But this offense is different without Tyreek Hill. And we've seen that when he's missed games. It's different when Tua is not in the game to throw to Tyreek Hill. We're talking, though, the thing maybe that we'd love to see in the draft, and you kind of have it in Eric Ezukanma, is if you're going to get double covered, you need a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", and go up and catch the ball in double coverage. Now, I don't know how much Tyreek's wrist situation impacted him from catching footballs, but he certainly dropped a lot of balls this season. And, you're talking about a culture where you need leadership from the players. This is a player-led team. Mike McDaniel's a player's coach, but there has to be some sort of accountability. And what we also learned in the press conference, we don't know if it was Tyreek Hill specifically, but a lot of players were late to meetings. They were constantly fined, and that did not change their behavior. And so, these are all things, if you look outside the Dolphins, that everyone knew around Tyreek. He's kind of a wild card, and he's going to say what he's going to say. But when he's on the field, he's the best. And the issue that I have in the NFL with accountability is the only way I feel, because of the amount of money that these guys make, fines aren't going to do anything. What's going to make them change is taking away playing time on the field. However, you're not going to do that because you've got to win. So those are my roundabout rants on that situation.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's frustration, not just with one thing. It's a lot of frustrations with a bunch of things that just came up to the surface after the game Sunday, which I get because, like you said, someone like him, it's the first time he hasn't made the playoffs. It's the first time he hasn't reached 1,000 yards. He was just voted number one player. Where is he going to come in next year with that? For him, he's not used to this. With that said, though, you can't say that stuff if you're a team captain.
You're captain on the team, right? Take
a beat, have your thoughts, wait a day, sleep on it, go home, say it in private if you want. You can't say it there because I know there's been talk as well. Rich Eisen, especially the past 24 hours or so, he thinks this is a play for money because if you look at his contract, Tyreek, in 2026, he has zero guaranteed money. He's trying to he's going to make a stink to get some of that money in 2026 guaranteed. I don't agree with that, but could that be a play here from Tyreek?
I mean, look, Drew Rosenhaus redid his contract last year to make more guaranteed money. They redid that when Justin Jefferson re-signed his deal, and so Tyreek had guaranteed money. But at this point, he also has an out in 2026, and it's almost like if we're going to pay you $50 million, which is roughly what he's due to make next season, which is a lot,
insane money.
They want to see that you're worth the money. I mean, it's the same argument that you can make with Jimmy Butler. And, when you have an off season, I hate to bring this up, but this is the reality of what we're dealing with. We're talking about the face of an organization. You got into an altercation with someone on a boat dock. You had an altercation at your home with an OnlyFans model. You had
the house fire. There's a lot of stuff.
The house fire. There's
a lot of stuff. There was something at a comedy club in Atlanta where he had to leave the scene because the people he was with were starting. It's an endless list, and I'm not even going into some other stuff that we could go into.
Right.
It's an endless list of headlines that no player wants one of these. He's got every week there's one coming out.
Right, but especially if you want to be a troll in the media and you want to, be satirical and show a lot of sarcasm, that's fine. But when you're if you are the person that's being late to meetings, and if you're a team captain and you're not holding people accountable, I mean, when you're paid that kind of money, that's the expectation. And I think that's, while these conversations were private with Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier, I can bet you that was part of the conversation, is that, you are a leader of this group and you need to lead by example. And, I expect Tyreek to have a better season. I need to speak to Drew and Tyreek about what they're going to do with the wrist. I would assume if it was supposed to be season-ending surgery, he would get that done this offseason. We also learned prior to the detainment in week 1 that he had some stem cells put into his knee. But, Tyreek's 31 years old. I mean, there's no doubting that he, when healthy, is a number 1 receiver. You just paid Jaylen Waddle. But if you're shelling out this kind of money, you need the product on the field to be there. And especially when you're dealing with, everything off of it.
Yeah, last question. And I've watched Mike and the Mad Dog growing up for years. So I'm going to phrase a question for the first time ever, like Mike and the Mad Dog. Josh,
Okay.
Gun to your head. Is Tyreek Hill on this team come training camp in August?
Yes.
Gun to your head.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't see a scenario where he wouldn't be. And, realistically, what are you going to get for Tyreek Hill?
Not much.
Second round pick.
Yeah.
You're not trading Tyreek Hill with everything that you gave. What was it, 5 picks to get him? I mean,
2 first, a second, a fourth, and maybe a sixth. I think it was a lot.
You're not letting him walk out the door. And there's certainly a way to restructure his deal. And I would love to see how Tyreek responds in this offseason. And there's always ways to move money around. And, we've seen the Dolphins do it. And as we learned today, they're going to address a few positions. They have to be. And when, the way that you can build successful teams is you got to clear that cap space. And you can do that with the players with a large contract. And, at this point, I hate to say it, but, Tyreek, you've made a lot of money in this league and you had a down year. So I would, why don't you give yourself an incentive-laden contract and show that you're worth the money that you're owed? But you may not feel that. You want, obviously, the guaranteed money up front. But, I think everybody wants to see him return to form that he was 2 years ago. I understand you're getting double covered, but again,
that's why you're getting paid this money, though. Find a way to beat it. Yeah, okay. So that's enough about Tyreek Hill. Tua, this hip injury, I know he said if they would have won, if they would have made the playoffs, he would have played. It sounded like he wasn't medically cleared. And I know that's what he said. And he probably thought that in his heart. To me, reading between lines, I don't think if they made the playoffs, I don't think he was playing. What's the vibe around this hip injury? Should fans, look, they don't have a game until September now. And it sounds like it just needs rest, not surgery. But
yeah,
what are you hearing about this hip injury? Is it just rest, essentially?
Chris Grier said he has no concerns about it affecting him long term. From some people that I've spoken to, I know there's been a couple reports out there that there was like a partial tear in the hip. I don't know if it's the labrum. I don't know what specific area of the hip. But it all goes back to Tua being smart. And I think Chris Grier hit it on the head, when he says, look, you can't be Superman out there. You just need to live for the next play. You have to be available. And I think this year he understands the value, of his availability to this team. You're 2-4 without him. If you don't make the Damar Hamlin play, which was just an awkward situation, there was no reason to do that. You're maybe missing 2 games with a hip injury, or maybe you're playing through. I guarantee you those 4 games when you went 1-3, you're winning.
Cost in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. You're winning at least one of those games, if not 2. So 2 more. So you're 3-4 out of that stretch. And then you're in the playoffs where you could potentially even rest, week 18, where you're guaranteed the 7 seed. So, to me as a player, Tua, your money's guaranteed. You're going to be worth $170 million. Be smart and understand that, your family's taken care of. Now go play football. And it's not just about football. It's about going out and being healthy and winning. And, that's kind of the next step of this team is, what is the realistic ceiling when you have Josh Allen in the division, you've got Lamar Jackson in the conference, you've got Patrick Mahomes in the conference, and you've got Joe Burrow in the conference. And you're most likely looking at being a wild card team and then having to go on the road to a cold place and go upset a Hall of Fame quarterback. And sorry, Dolphins fans, that's the reality.
Good luck with that. Yeah, exactly.
And I think the fan base is starting to understand that now, as much as the organization will say, the Super Bowl is the goal every year. And I mean, shoot, the Dolphins fans have lived this for 25 years.
Oh, I've lived it. Yeah, I've lived it.
For Brady, I mean, it's, you're going through Foxborough when Brady was
Jim Kelly, Brady, now Josh Allen. It's just been one cycle of nonstop hell, where there's always someone in the AFC East who just has our number. Even in the Marino years, and I'm not counting like the 80s. I'm talking like early 90s till he hung it up in 99 or so. It was always Jim Kelly in our way. It was always somebody in our way. And it's been that way forever. And what I thought was an interesting comment, say, from Chris Grier, when asked, you're 6 years into this rebuild and all this stuff. He goes, and there hasn't been any success yet. He goes, it's a fair question. The last 2 years around the playoffs, we didn't win games, which is not the goal. We are in there to compete and get Super Bowls. Our biggest thing is the quarterback. When he misses 6.5 games, to me, that's the difference there. That's coming from the GM who drafted him. That tells me they're frustrated with him, which leads to my next question. Do you think all they do is go out there and sign, like Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, Mac Jones type to be a number 2? Or do they do that and are they looking, let's trade back into the end of round 1 and try to get a quarterback? Maybe round 2, we surprise the world, take a quarterback. Kind of what Atlanta did last year with Michael Penix when everyone goes, why are you taking a quarterback? You got one. Just look, Tua, he's here for another 2 more years at least. That doesn't mean we have to put on pause looking for the next guy, because I think most fans, and if they don't see this, it's tough to win games when your quarterback's always missing games. And yes, we paid him. He's here, but he ain't here for life. And we got to have plan B. Start working on that, I think. And that's not an old guy per se. It's a young guy. Do you see them doing both those things, or just get the old guy and worry about his replacement when he eventually leaves?
I see them doing both. And I mean, I think
it gives me hope.
I mean, like, realistically, look at the Packers. I mean, you brought in Jordan Love, and then they made a trade to bring in another young quarterback to back up Jordan Love this season when he got hurt. But, we asked this question to General Manager Chris Grier, and he said, it's kind of interesting how he put it. I believe it was something along the lines of, like, they came in like runners up to a bunch of really good backup quarterbacks. So I know one of them that we've reported on was Andy Dalton from Carolina. And it was a situation of salary cap and giving up compensatory picks to bring someone here. So, I mean, even in this era, like, I don't know how much an Aiden O'Connell or a Gardner Minshew would have really helped, to be honest with you.
Minshew would have helped.
But Joe Flacco got $3 million. I think, we know that Mike White was a cap casualty. And we heard Chris Grier say today, look, Skylar Thompson took this team up to Buffalo and almost won a playoff game when Tua was hurt 2 years ago. And we liked what we saw from him, and we wanted to give him that opportunity. And obviously he's not the guy. I don't expect him to be around much longer. So I do see them adding somebody in the draft. I don't know how early they would do that, because you still need an impactful player on this team. And that's kind of the balance. So they'll tell you, it's how the board falls. But I don't necessarily see them trading up to get a quarterback in rounds 1 or 2 unless someone falls. So
Jalen Milroe, if he's there at the end of round 1, could I see them moving a second-round pick to try to get back into round 1 to have a second pick? But then you're also taking a second quarterback from the University of Alabama, and some people that would drive some fans like, really? Now you're going back to Alabama again, which is not fair in any way. They're two different people, but that will be the narrative. But someone like that, I could see that type of move. Not with their first pick, though. They got to get an instant starter day 1.
Yeah, they need an offensive tackle, and they need an offensive guard, or
a nose tackle or a safety, something who can play.
Yeah, I mean, you drafted Patrick Paul in the second round. He's Teron Armstead's replacement. We don't know if Teron's going to be back next season. You hope that Austin Jackson returns next year. Probably Aaron Brewer would be a good piece to bring back. But, Grier saying today that they are going to invest on this offensive line. And I know Dolphins fans are saying, we've been saying this all season. And then Robert Hunt plays every snap this year, doesn't give up a single sack, doesn't commit a single penalty. And look, he got overpaid. They got priced out. He was making over $20 million per year. So, you get it, and it's the same thing with Andrew Van Ginkel. There was a miss there. He's an all-pro player this year. So you've got to protect Tua. You've got to go get a big guy early. And, yeah, I mean, it depends on how the board falls. But it's also a question of, is Mike McDaniel the guy if Tua's not the guy? Because can Milroe run an outside scheme? Like, for example, if we're using him, or are you really trying to take the best quarterback available, or are you going to try to find a quarterback that fits the system?
I would take the best one available, and it's up to the head coach to make it then work. That's how I would operate it. If he's such a genius, which I wouldn't call him a genius.
But we haven't seen that.
I know. I know. You ain't got to tell me. I know.
So,
I've done hours of shows about this. I know.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of brings me to another topic of this Tyreek situation, for example. Pulls himself out of the game in the fourth quarter. Mike McDaniel said post-game, like, I had other players on the field that I had to worry about. And it's almost as if you're the play caller and you're the guy, it's almost like you need someone else to handle the rest of that. We'll call it the head coaching responsibility.
But he shouldn't be calling the plays. That's the point. And he said today he's not going to give it up. He will call. He said pretty much no, and then he said why. He goes, if I thought it would help, which, I mean, if he goes back and watches these tapes in a month of all season with a clear head and open mind, I think his opinion would change. But I know once you're that far into it, it's tough for anyone to see it because it's like, no, It was right. We're like, Mike, this stuff ain't working. He still lost a challenge this week again. We won't even get into that. I mean, it's just he can't. Very few people can do both. Sean Payton, Super Bowl head coach, success everywhere he's been. He can do both. Andy Reid, same. He can do both. There's very few people who can do both. He ain't one of them.
No. And, especially with the possibility of Anthony Weaver leaving, it seems like he's getting a ton of interest around the league for head coaching opportunities, especially now with Antonio Pierce being gone. With the Raiders, I think that's an attractive job for a defensive coach. We don't know what's going to happen in New England.
Sounds like the Bears are really interested in
Bears are very
Weaver.
interested. And I mean, Weaver's very high on a lot of people's lists. And, when you talk about this team and Stephen Ross's message is, you want continuity. And you look at Mike McDaniel, he's going to have his fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years here being a head coach, or the guys on defense are going to have to learn their fourth defensive scheme in 4 years. So, that's
probably Robert Saleh too. You can take it to the bank. Robert Saleh is tight with Mike McDaniel. Robert Saleh is not going to. I know Jacksonville reached out. No, he's not getting a head coaching job after how it ended with the Jets. But it will be Robert Saleh because him and Mike McDaniel are very close.
And I can tell you, Robert Saleh does have a residence down here in South Florida.
There you go.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the worst kept secret in the world, honestly.
Yeah.
But two more things. And one, I just want to bring up a comment since we're talking about quarterbacks. James Hurst, trade down and draft a young man from Syracuse. I love Kyle McCord. I ain't trading down for him. If he's there around 3, 4, 5, absolutely. Let's not get nuts. I'm a big Kyle McCord fan. But yes, if he's there in those middle rounds, go Kyle McCord.
You have 10 picks.
Exactly. They got 10 picks. They got picks to burn here, which it's not even a pick to burn because it's a need. It's clearly a need. Two more things. Offensive line, Chris Grier wouldn't walk back his comments about you're more worried, all that stuff we know. Man. Said the loss of Austin Jackson and Keon Smith, who, by the way, was a backup and hurt on August 10th. The fact he brought up Keon Smith's name, I mean, Chris, come on. It's Keon Smith here. Is that a house of cards?
Teams wanted to
Keon
trade
Smith is
for
a
him.
point.
I know. But, I mean, look.
And he said Lamb's not coming back, which we all kind of knew he's going to retire. And with Armstead, it appears, even if he wants to play, it's not going to be Miami. That's how it came off to me.
Yeah, and I would assume that Liam's out the door unless he's coming back on a severe discount. But to me,
they can't bring him back.
His play, he cannot be a starting guard in this league. We'll see what happens. But he did say that it's time to invest. And, I think that's a first or second round pick. And you're at 13. We saw what he did with Laramie Tunsil. I don't think it's worth trading him away, but there should be somebody there. And
even if it's a tackle who can play guard, unlike Paul who couldn't, if there's a tackle who can play guard, that's fine. Because that's okay, because that does give you flexibility. Because with all these guys leaving, they're going to need a number 3 swing tackle anyways. So if they have a tackle who can play guard and also be that swing tackle, God forbid something happens to Jackson, God forbid something happens to Paul, that's fine. But
yes,
that
would be the number 1 need.
Yeah, yes, obviously. And I think in round 1, someone in the trenches on either side, I think they need. Because I'm not going to bank on Campbell being back, Jones at nose tackle. It's just a guy. They need someone on either line, and that's where I would sort of going around one. I know a lot of fans are talking about this guy from Georgia who's a safety. He's great. I don't know if safety, I would take one that high, but we'll see. A lot of time talk about that. Last one, and I'll let you get out of here.
Yeah.
And we talked about Mike McDaniel a bit. And, the tardiness thing, the play calling thing, the challenges, all the things. Do you think there's going to be a lot of staff changes? Is someone going to be a fall guy? Are they going to make some staff changes? I know the special teams coordinator, everyone's kind of waiting for it. And I'm telling fans, don't hold your breath on this. We think it's obvious. They might not see it. They might not see it the same way. Do you think we're going to see staff changes? And outside of Weaver leaving, which is out of their control, if that happens, do you see anything else happening? Frank Smith in trouble? Anybody?
No, I don't think so. Again, you're talking about continuity with the staff, and the guys here really work well together from that perspective. However, as we learned today, specifically talking about the tardiness and the fines, as Grier was, mentioning, he's like, a lot of this stuff doesn't even get to the coaches. And like when it does, that's when it's handled. And to me, it's almost like these guys from a coaching perspective, they work really well together, but somehow that message is getting lost in translation. So it's figuring out how to get to the players to evoke change. And I think that's something that they will work together on. I would make a move at special teams coordinator if this is a results-based business. I understand, Danny Crossman is beloved, and, you could argue that this is the first year of the new kickoff, regime. But once again, you need to find people that will make changes specifically as it relates to the field. And if it's a results-based business, the results simply, in my eyes, weren't there. Washington seems like a great pick. Seems like he's a future both in special teams and on offense. But,
there was a stretch when they didn't have two in September for Seattle, the Colts, and the Titans. Now, they lost all those games. Where special teams, Riley in particular, but special teams was an unmitigated disaster those 3 weeks. And look, if you're bad on special teams, which I know it's a niche thing, but it matters. One, it matters. And two, when you don't have your starting quarterback, it really matters because you can't give up hidden yards. You can't not take the yards that are there to help out the number two quarterback. Though that 3-game stretch, he should have never survived, honestly, because it was bad all year. But that 3-game stretch with Riley in particular was horrible. There was penalty after penalty every game.
Yeah, and I think that put a microscope on it. And the thing that I don't have the information on, and maybe we can look it up or we can find someone, is I would love to kind of grade the special teams for each team and see where the Dolphins stack up.
I know they were ranked either like 29th, 30th, 31st, or 32nd as of a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And I know last year it was close to that same bottom tier. And I wrote an article last year where I had all of his metrics heading back to his final year with the Bills. It's just not good. Like, the numbers are awful. And this year didn't really change those to be anything better. So it's been bad heading back to his final year with the Bills, the years with Flores, the years with McDaniel. I have the numbers. I just got to find it's not good. And look, I'm sure he's going to say, well, it's not all me. If they're out there making penalties, I can only put them in the right. Part of that's true, but there's also a part, like you said, results-oriented business. Sorry, not sorry. Your unit's not performing up to par.
Right. I think it was a couple of games ago where they had the fake punt run on them. And
Houston, like everyone, and they still defended him, saying we knew it was coming.
We were in the right. Well, yeah, we were in the right. Yeah, I mean that one was tough, but it's you got to find players that want to be here. You got to find players that want to be on special teams, and you got to have buy-in from your leaders. And I think that's where Calais Campbell was special this year, and I almost would love to see him back. I know Chris Grier said he would welcome him back with open arms, but as a player say, like, you've got to, at the end of the day, play for the brother beside you, and simply that the locker room was lost this year.
Yeah,
and,
they're going to have to prove to Campbell that he should come back, because I think Campbell's obviously good. If he wants to play, will have options, and he'll have a lot of options with teams that are winning.
I think he can
and
go
if
where he wants.
Weaver gets a head coaching job, he might just want to go with Weaver because they were on the sidelines after the game. Hug it. So he clearly loves Weaver. If you're Miami, if you want something like that back, you're going to, every move you make this offseason is going to have to show that this isn't a total rebuild. We're trying to compete next year. Campbell be a part of this. Not that hey, we're going to go out there and sign another old guy like Shaq Barrett. It's like, you can't do that stuff. You got to prove to him
that really hurt this team. I mean,
I know. You got to tell me.
You signed Emmanuel Hogba, kind of, who you let walk out the building. You get him on a huge deal for $5 million. But I think had they had known that Shaq would do that, I think there's a possibility to keep Van Ginkel. There's a lot of possibilities.
There were other guys when they made that signing. That's the thing. There were other guys to sign, even if they didn't want Van Ginkel. It didn't have to be Shaq. And plus, Shaq was working the Jets against Miami to get more money out of Miami, which is fine. All players do it. That's their job. But if his heart wasn't into it, how did Miami not maybe see that a little bit? I don't know.
I think he did play some snaps last week for Tampa, so we'll see what happens here in the postseason.
Watch him make a big play in the playoffs and help win a game. Dolphins fans will jump off a bridge.
God, I don't know how we do it every year. I don't know how. But
oh my God,
roller coaster. Here we go.
I'm kind of numb to it at this point. It's like fans like, man, you got to get somebody. I'm not angry, which is sad, because if it was anger, it would actually be a feeling. It's almost apathy, which is worse. When it's apathy, it's worse. And I'm not there yet, but it's kind of getting there after 25 years at this point. It's like, what are we doing? It's like, it's just Groundhog's Day. It seems like Groundhog's Day. They could have replayed the press conference. They could have replayed that press conference from 2022 and 2023 instead of having one today, because it was pretty much the same thing. Not much different. Same thing. Quarterback's got to stay healthy. Offensive line, it's not as bad as you guys think. We'll do blah, blah, blah. Talking about, the head coach, I got to get better. It's like the same talking points they said in 2022, 2023, after 2024 season. And if they're back next year, who knows what happens, but it might be the same type of talking points a year from now. We'll see, and we'll talk about it, Josh. But thanks so much for joining us. Everyone, be sure to watch Josh Moser on WSVN 7, South Florida's #1 news station. Follow him on social media at The Mose Knows, and thank you for broadcasting live from Miami Gardens, Florida tonight. I appreciate that.
Facility. This is a good one.
A little different facility. Now that the season's over, we'll still do shows. It might not be every week, but we're still going to do shows when there's stuff to talk about. And Lord knows with the Dolphins, there's always something to talk about. So, Josh, thanks for joining me every week this year, and we'll be in touch. And folks, thank you for watching as always, and we'll talk to you again after a while.